With all that is going on in our world today and the ongoing conversations about fairness, I have a question for us. Is God fair? Kind of thought-provoking, isn't it? Is God fair? I think most of us would say, well, yeah, I think he's fair. I mean, he's God, right? But honestly, you shouldn't care what I think the answer is to that question. And frankly, I'm not concerned about what you think the answer is. I want to know what God thinks, because that is truth. Where do we find truth? In His Word. So let's go there, dive deep into this question. Is God fair? In 2 Samuel, we read about King David, hand-chosen by God Himself to lead His people, the nation of Israel. David comes to a horrendously low point in his reign when he commits adultery with Bathsheba and then tries to cover up his crime by having Bathsheba's husband murdered. David thought he had gotten away with it. He should have, under the law, been stoned to death for his crimes. But he was the king, and he thought he had gotten away with it, until God revealed truth to the prophet Nathan, who confronts David in 2 Samuel 12. He says to David, "Why have you despised the word of the Lord by doing evil in His sight?" Did you think God didn't see that, David? "You have struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword. You have taken his wife to be your wife, and you have killed him with the sword of the sons of Ammon." David, you are a cold-blooded murderer and adulterer and a horrific leader who uses his own people to do his dirty work. David's caught. What does he say to Nathan? "I have sinned against the Lord." David knows he can't get away with it now. It has been revealed. He also knows he's a dead man walking. So he doesn't stop with a simple confession, "I did it," which again, under the law, required the death penalty against him. In Psalm 51, we read how he comes before his holy God and recognizes the depravity of his own sin and the height of God's mercy. Psalm 51, David says, "Be gracious to me, O God, according to your loving kindness, according to the greatness of your compassion. Blot out my transgressions, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin." First note, David knows he's a dead man walking. He has nothing to offer the Lord in exchange for God's forgiveness. All that he can do is fall on his sword and appeal to the character of God. "Be gracious to me, O God, according to your loving kindness." Then note that David uses 3 different words for his sin. Why? Because he's recognizing the depth of his depravity. First he says, "According to the greatness of your compassion, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin." Transgression, that first word, is pesha in the Hebrew. It means rebellion. David knew that ultimately he had sinned and rebelled against God Himself. Then he asks to be washed thoroughly from his iniquity. That word in the Hebrew is avon. It means distorted or twisted. And he recognizes that in his flesh he is a distorted, twisted human being, a far cry from who God created him to be. And finally he says, "Cleanse me from my sin." That word is chatat. In the Hebrew it means missing the mark. David knew he had fallen far short of his holy God's expectations and demands of him. But note also, David uses 3 different words for cleanse, what he's asking God to do. Again, showing us he recognizes the height of God's mercy. He says, "Blot out my transgression." That word blot out was first used in the flood narrative, when God wiped out almost all of creation, never to be seen again. David's saying, do that with my sin. Blot it out. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity. The word wash there in Hebrew is a laundry term that was used to clean contaminated laundry that had been contaminated with leprosy. David says, wash it away. And finally, he says, cleanse me from my sin. That word cleanse means to be spiritually, ceremonially clean before the Lord. He knows that it is only by God's great mercy and love for him that he will be able to stand before a holy God and survive the death penalty for his sin. What does God do? We go back to 2 Samuel 12, when Nathan said to David, the Lord has taken away your sin. You shall live. Is that fair? I mean, how many people were stoned to death for similar crimes in the nation of Israel? And here's David, and he gets away with it. He's off the hook. He's taken away your sin. David, is that fair? No, it's outrageously unfair. Is God fair? No, he is outrageously unfair, and thank God he is. Take a look at the cross. Jesus Christ, Son of God, God himself, paid the price for my sin and your sin with his own blood, dying on the cross, taking the death penalty off the table for us so that we could spend eternity with him. Is God fair? No, he is outrageously unfair. And thank God, yes, today let's all thank God that he is.